Hello everyone. Hi. Welcome to 45 Minutes with Adam McKay, the director of the film Don't Look Up. My name is Avi Davis. I'm a journalist with Brut Media. I cover the environment and its impact on us, on people. And in a few minutes, we'll be hearing from Adam McKay about his film Don't Look Up, which has been called the most accurate film about society's terrifying non-response to climate breakdown. In case you haven't seen the film, I know it feels like everyone and their grandmother has seen it, but in case you haven't seen it, it was a huge hit on Netflix. It has a big Hollywood cast. It's a satire. It's not directly about the climate crisis. It's about two scientists, played by Jennifer Lawrence and Leonardo DiCaprio, who discover a comet that is going to destroy planet Earth. And they do everything they can think of to try to get people to take action. They tell the president, they tell the media, they tell the public, but they're met mostly with indifference and inaction. It manages to be very funny while also being very stressful at the same time. And to help us understand that stress and how we can do something about it that's positive, we're also going to hear from three climate activists and researchers who have experienced in real life some of the situations that you see in the movie. Next, we're going to go to Adam McKay. Right before that, we're going to see a short video about how the movie has been received by the climate community. So,
hey, cheers, everyone, huh?
There's that powerful scene at the end of Don't Look Up, where people are sitting around the table coming together for their final moments and talking about the things that they were grateful for and made a difference in their lives. We can't wait till then.
We really did have everything, didn't we?
70% of us in the United States are already worried about climate change. What's the first step? It's using our voice. It is the absolutely critical first step because you know what? Most of us aren't doing it.
If you want to be part of the pushing, join a climate group. The best thing you can do is learn so you can communicate with people who you're in contact with every day.
The IPCC assessment report tells us there are solutions if we act now.
This is a case where we have the answer right in front of us, and it's renewables. And they're actually, for the most part, cheaper.
Ending coal is the single most important step to keep this 1.5 degree goal of the Paris Agreement.
Everybody can make a difference. You can make a difference at home, in the products you decide to buy, what kind of car you drive.
You know, we are never going to get a change in policy if we don't have a movement behind it. And movements cannot start without a changing narrative.
The IPCC concludes every bit of warming matters. Every year matters. Every choice matters, and every action matters. So do something, anything, and talk about it.
So Adam, welcome. You're joining us from Ireland, I understand. Is that right?
I am.
Yeah, so welcome.
We're outside Dublin.
Okay. Welcome to ChangeNOW. I wanted to ask because for people who don't know, your first films were really pure comedy with Will Ferrell, Anchorman, stuff like that. How did you go from Anchorman to a parable about climate apocalypse?
Well, I think the simple answer is pure fear. I started reading the IPCC reports a few years back. I read David Wallace Wells's book, Uninhabitable Earth. And I sort of had this moment. It was while we were making the movie Vice, and I learned about how much W. Bush and Cheney stopped action on the climate, where I really started to freak out and lose sleep. And as dubious as our social media landscape is, one of the nice things about it is you can talk to scientists. So I started asking a lot of questions through DMs and emails, and everything I was hearing was really, truly terrifying. And this was on the heels of the 2007-08 financial collapse, which was also on the heels of the Iraq war. So there was definitely a mounting doubt about our so-called experts and the elites, and something was wrong that had been itching me for a long time.
And after you had the idea for the film, was it hard to convince Netflix and all these big Hollywood stars to do something, to do such a heavy topic?
You know, there were a few studios and outlets that wanted to do it. I think the number one thing that scared the other ones off was the ending. You know, the fact that it didn't follow the blueprint of your typical comedy or your typical sort of positive Hollywood story. But I got to give credit to Netflix. They were into it, and they got what we were talking about, and they understood the importance of it. And a few other studios as well were really understood what we were trying to do and the kind of realm we were living in. So no, but you know, I mean, for aspiring filmmakers out there, it certainly helps to have Leonardo DiCaprio, Meryl Streep, Tyler Perry, and Jen Lawrence.
So it was always clear for you that it shouldn't have a happy ending?
No question. Yeah, you know, I always write outlines for whatever I'm writing. And this one, there was never one moment where it wasn't going to end that way. We had to break the routine. And part of our theory was that, you know, you guys know, stories are really powerful. I mean, the mythology that we tell ourselves really is kind of a collective organizing principle. And after thousands and thousands of movies where the superheroes fight the supervillains, or the Bruce Willis fights the bad guys, it always works out. So the kind of central conceit of this movie was that if we don't do anything, this isn't going to work out. So no, that was a deal breaker right from the beginning. That had to be the ending.
Great. And did you speak to real scientists while you were developing the film?
Oh yeah, tons. We were lucky to have Amy Mainzer, who's actually one of the world's foremost experts on NEOs, near Earth objects. So she helped me keep the science in line when it came to what would actually happen if a comet were going to hit Earth. And then I have, you know, lots of climate scientists that I'm always talking to. But, you know, one of the things about this movie is that the comet, it's not supposed to be a direct, perfect metaphor for climate change. Really what the movie's about is, because if you look at climate change, we could deal with it. Like we could have dealt with it 30 years ago. We could have dealt with it 120 years ago. We had solar power in the late 19th century. Really, the story of the climate crisis is our inability to act, whether that's through profit, greed, careerism, lack of imagination, long list of reasons. So that's really what this movie was about. It was never really about the comet. It was just about that definitive moment. You know, we're on an IPCC countdown clock, as a lot of you know, that's just over 7 years. And yet I don't hear it mentioned at all in the global media.
So the movie had a big impact, was a big success with audiences and made an impact in the entertainment world. But did you have hope that it would lead to some kind of concrete change outside of that?
I mean, you can never imagine that with a movie. I was just hoping to, you know, from our own little corner, send a message out that the people that are feeling like we do aren't alone. And I was extremely heartened by a bunch of different reactions. The nation of Brazil rallied around this movie. They'd obviously been through a lot of years of corruption and sort of up is down leadership. There was also a day where there were hundreds of thousands of protesters in France, and I've seen Just Stop Oil, which is one of the best climate crisis groups out there right now formed. And I saw they were on the red carpet of the BAFTAs. And I've just seen over and over again people sort of who know, who have that feeling go towards this movie. So that was actually beyond our wildest hopes. It is ultimately just a movie, and we're going to do more. But yeah, it was, you know what it was ultimately? It was really moving. There were several pieces that were written. George Monbiot from the UK wrote a piece that said that this is my last 30, 40 years of my life. And it was really emotional. And there were a lot of, like, Peter Kalmus, a climate scientist from NASA, a lot of scientists, a lot of people that are frustrated with the fact that big money has taken over politics and media and culture, really felt heard with this. So it connected in a way that we never would have, ever imagined. And it was wonderful.
And what role do you see the entertainment world as having as this crisis continues?
Well, look, the line we're talking about is reality, right? And the line of reality right now has been diminished, fogged by a lot of powerful multi-billion-dollar industries that buy advertising time on our news, that pay off our politicians, sometimes directly. In the US, you can do it legally. In other countries, you can do it in a roundabout way. So reality is very blurred right now. And what's exciting about storytelling, whether it's movies, TV shows, books, radio, whatever it is when those mediums, that mass media and news, of course, catches up with reality, it's really powerful. But when it doesn't, it's very destructive.
Right. We just have a couple minutes left before our panel comes on. But I was wondering, despite the dark ending to your movie, do you remain hopeful about the climate?
I do. We have it. We have the technology. Renewables are cheaper than fossil fuels. We have incredible scientists. We've seen the incredible things that mankind can achieve when we all get on the same goal. And I know we're going to do it once we do it. The thing that's really scaring me right now is it is getting awfully late for this level of denial, obfuscation. I mean, it is really getting late. And it's very disheartening to see the media and the press still drag their feet, our leaders not even bring it up. I mean, we have press conferences at the White House. I don't hear any questions about what is, empirically speaking, the biggest story in the history of mankind, the greatest threat to life in 66 million years. That's all scientific fact. I'm a screenwriter, director. Don't listen to me, look it up. And so it's getting really scary, and it's really making me wonder what the human mind can do for self-interest to deny reality. But ultimately, I am hopeful because I know we have that technology, and I know that when we rally, we can do incredible things.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we're going to ask our panel to come up in just a moment. But before that, we're going to watch a short clip from the movie. In this scene, the scientists try to alert the president, played by Meryl Streep. If we can
and
go
using
to that.
Gauss's method of orbital determination and the average astrometric uncertainty of 0.04 arc seconds. We then asked...
Whoa, what the hell is
so
what?
bored. Just tell us what it is. Seriously, stop.
Stop
what Dr. Mindy is trying to say is that there's a comet headed directly towards Earth. And according to NASA's computers, that object is going to hit the Pacific Ocean at 62 miles due west off the coast of Chile.
And then what happens, like a tidal wave?
No. it will be far more catastrophic. There will be mile-high tsunamis fanning out all across the globe. If this comet makes impact, it will have the power of a billion Hiroshima bombs. There will be magnitude 10 or 11 earthquakes.
You're breathing weird. It's making me uncomfortable.
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to articulate the science.
I know, but it's like so stressful. I like trying to like listen to
I don't think you understand the gravity of the situation.
Great. So please give a round of applause for our panel here. So Yamina, Saheb, my first question is for you. Yamina, you're an engineer. You're a lead author of IPCC reports. You're also one of the world's top experts about the impact that our buildings are having on the climate. And so one of your jobs is to tell elected officials kind of bad news and frightening research, like, for instance, that the building sector accounts for something like 20% of global emissions. So do you relate to this scene?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I fully relate to the scene, actually, because my job is to explain to policymakers and to business leaders in which direction we are going in terms of decarbonization of the building stock. And I am usually told that I am radical, just because by saying that we should not use public money to lock our buildings in carbon, because then it will be more costly to decarbonize in the future. And by locking our buildings in carbon, we also lock low income in energy poverty, because climate policies have impacts that go beyond climate. It has impact on the daily life of the people. And I am very often told that I am radical. As an engineer in the building sector, you know, engineering is not for females. And in the building sector is not for females. And understanding physics is not for females. So basically having a radical female going to EU or international meetings, explaining that what we are doing is not the right thing, and we could do the right things, actually. We know the right things and we should do them, is just a part of my daily life, unfortunately. So the movie describes very well this part of my life.
Yeah, I think you told me that people said you were too emotional sometimes, right?
Oh yeah. This is a very usual argument when you have a female expert in front of you, because a female cannot be expert in a field dominated by males. So I am used to that. When I was 20, when I was young, I was intimidated by these kind of remarks. But today I'm no longer intimidated. And I even had a boss who told me one day, "I don't understand. When you are talking, I feel you are a male, but you are not male." And I thought, oh, what the hell is that? Do you think that female cannot think? Because it was, and we were discussing renovation programs for Europe, for buildings, you see? So he couldn't imagine female able to think through the renovation program.
Thanks. Camille, Etienne, my next question is for you. Camille, you're one of the most visible young activists for the climate here in France. So you're often interviewed on TV. Your videos on social media have gotten millions of views. But you've also found a very unique way of getting politicians to pay attention to the climate crisis. Can you tell us about that?
Well, actually, I'm just trying to do everything I can to get back the power to the people. Because I feel like the people in power today are just stalling my possibility of living, basically. And just, you know, I grew up next to a glacier, and I work a lot with scientists, actually. I am super lucky for that. And they told me that, telling me about what they discover. And I was talking with a glaciologist, and she told me that maybe my daughter, that I might have, will not be able to see this glacier. Like, so it's really happening now. It's not something just for future generation. We are today facing the effect of climate change. And so I said, okay, people are dying from climate change like now. As I'm talking on stage, just look to India, just look to Pakistan. People are dying from this. So I said, okay, what can I do? And I'm just doing everything I can. So we basically sue governments directly, like people in power, to say, you are accountable for what's going on. We are not going to let you do this with impunity any longer. we are watching you, and you have to take responsibility. So that was one of the things we tried. And then, for instance, I'm working a lot on a campaign called Stop Hiccup, which is a pipeline. Thank you guys. That's really moves me because, you know, few months ago, nobody ever heard about this, and we just tried everything we can to be able to sleep at night and say this pipeline is going to go from Uganda to Tanzania. It's going to be one of the biggest pipelines in the world, and nobody knew about that. There were no mass media that helped us to talk about this. So we said, okay, we are going to do this by our own. We, the people, are going to be vocal. We, the people, are going to fight. So we coordinate with activists from Uganda directly, from activists from all around the world. We are going to the bank to say to investors and to say, do not finance this. We are making you accountable for this. So yeah, I'm actually trying everything I can, and it involves working a lot closely with scientists that are telling us that's the truth and that's the fact. And we are trying to, because you know, these people deserve the truth. They deserve to know what's going on. It's not because we're young that we want the adult to lie to us. So I'm just doing this with many others, actually.
And do you think this technique of taking politicians to court is something that other people should try, other activists should try in other countries?
Absolutely. We need to try everything. And you know, I don't have the answer because we are not yet done. The job is not done. So you have the answer, guys, in the crown. You know what you could do. I don't know what are you good at. I don't know what are your relationship. I don't know where you're born, but you surely can do something. And you're the only one that knows the best thing, the best action. I think we are really, really just like, well, what we've done is just really small, and it could be way bigger, and it depends on you, actually. So I don't really believe when we say, you know, this is the world of tomorrow and blah, blah, blah. It just depends on what we are doing today. So maybe we could have like a huge ecological revolution, but it just depends, like starting tomorrow or even tonight. But it just depends of what we decided or not. It's as simple. If you decide to do this first step, and there is not one first step. It is not just to go vegetarian or just go zero waste or just like sue the state. There is no good first step. There's just the first step that is yours. And then you have the power to make this, like, to make history, basically. Just so do it, please.
Yeah. Yamina, did you have a question?
Yeah, just actually to say to Camille and to everyone that climate litigation cases are increasing, and we do consider, as I am expert on climate mitigation policies, we do consider today that climate litigation is part of the climate mitigation actions, and the last IPCC report mentions climate litigation, so we are going in the right direction because that's the only way to put enough pressure on government to make the changes that we need. So thank you, Camille, and to all those who have already taken action.
May I add in on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Britt Wray, a professor at Stanford and an expert on climate anxiety. Please go ahead.
While we're on the fascinating and crucial topic of climate litigation, a study that my colleagues and I were involved in doing looked at the burden and scope of climate anxiety in 10,000 children and young people in 10 countries around the world, in the global south and the global north. And we found that 45% of these 10,000 young people say that their feelings about the climate crisis are negatively impacting their ability to function and get through the day. So eat, sleep, concentrate, go to school, go to work. And 75% say the future is frightening. 56% say they feel that humanity is doomed. And many other sad statistics. Why I bring this up is because it's being used in a court case whereby young people are suing 33 European nations for failing to protect their futures by not taking effective climate action. And the argument that's being tried for is that the feelings that young people are being left with today around this, the complete betrayal and sense of loss of security, can actually amount to a violation of human rights because it's being subjected to inhumane treatment, to walk around feeling that way about your own futures, because people who are put in positions of power are failing to uptake their responsibility, you know, and effectively act. So that's one point there. But I was very honored to be able to work with Netflix on some materials around the release of Don't Look Up. And the studios understood that because the ending of the film is not happy and it really breaks the mold for Hollywood, that it could lead people spiraling, right? And really falling into a pit of despair of eco-anxiety spirals. And so some colleagues and I came together to offer for the Action website, which is fantastic and goes with the film, things that people can do to take care of their own mental health and be kind to their mind, including the fact that there's now a burgeoning field of climate-aware therapists who are here to validate these feelings and help people cope better with them. And that there are important containing groups, such as the Good Grief Network, which is a 10-step program modeled off of Alcoholics Anonymous to help people move through the feelings that come with climate awareness when they're disturbing at that level. Or climate cafes, where people can have frank, open, emotionally sound and authentic conversations about how they're feeling given all of this. Because yes, everyone is frustrated as well as feeling the distress. And importantly, the film was so validating, incredibly cathartic for people in the science movement around climate, but also the activists who've been working on this forever. And so we made a film of researchers reacting to scenes in Don't Look Up, whereby they were trying to understand, like, is this real? Are the panic attacks that we're seeing from Leonardo DiCaprio's character really what climate scientists are feeling? And we could say yes. I mean, I interview climate scientists and conservation biologists and activists as part of my work, and there's a real psychological toll that comes with bearing witness to the loss of ecosystems that people are throwing their whole careers and life energy into protecting. But what's interesting, and which is so brilliant about the film also capturing, is that these experts report it's not just the loss of a stable climate that makes them upset. What is so much worse is the moral injury that comes with knowing that we have solutions and seeing them be denied in their importance and application. And it's that aspect of the gaslighting, the dismissal, the disavowal that really brings the psychological harm. And so Don't Look Up really is multifaceted in that way of capturing both.
Thank you. I also wanted to, yeah. I was wondering if, Adam, you had any questions for the panel as well.
Yeah, it's, you know, I'm curious what you all think, and I'm familiar with your work to some degree across the board. Britt, I know, who's written an incredible book. Britt, when does your book come out? Is it already out?
Thank you for asking. It came out 3 weeks ago.
Generation
and it's called Generation Dread.
Yes. It's, by the way, it's fabulous. Like, it's a must read. Over in the States, I'm actually in Ireland, but in the States, there are constant articles about how teens are despondent, rates of depression are going up, lack of sleep, and they never mention climate. I have two daughters, one a teenager, one in her early 20s, and it's a major topic of discussion among all of them. But I'm curious, for the three of you, you know, one thing that I'm frustrated with, and this goes back to the fact that the media does not want to deal with this story, is a lot of the people I talk to don't seem to have a sense of the time frame. There's still this belief that it's 50 years away, it's 100 years away. And meanwhile, we've just blown through thresholds like the Thwaites ice shelf is going to collapse in the next 5 years. We saw those 70 degrees above normal temperatures in the Arctic and Antarctic. It's now come out that in the next 5 years, there's a 50% chance that we hit 1.5 degrees Celsius warming. And the one that I found really disturbing, I saw no coverage in the mainstream press, was that conservatively, within 8 years, 50% of our days all around the globe will be 1 every 100-year heat events. And I'm just curious from all of you, have you bumped up against this? Because it constantly hits me when I'm trying to do activist work or fundraise. I can tell there's a lot of people that think, relax, it's 100 years away.
Please.
Yep. I can answer from climate mitigation science perspective. You all heard about climate neutrality targets that are set by different governments, and the EU is leading on this, and they are all set for 2050. But in reality, when you consider the cumulative emissions of the EU, for example, we talk about the EU, but it applies for all other countries where we have climate targets. When you consider the cumulative emissions of the EU and the remaining carbon budget, how to use the remaining carbon budget in an equal way, then the EU climate target, neutrality target, should be set around 2033. But the debate is about 2050, and no one thinks about 2050 is far away. Those setting this target today will not be here for sure, will not be in power at least by 2050. And then when you try to bring this idea of the time frame, hey guys, you cannot, 2050 is too late. And then they say, but it's already good that we have something and we are doing better than China and the US. And no, the debate is not about doing better than China and the US. The debate is about taking the responsibility for what we have done, because we are as Europeans, we are responsible for the climate disaster because we emitted these emissions. And there is, when we postpone our climate neutrality target, this means that we are not allowing the rest of the planet, and especially the global south, to develop and to live in the planet. And this part of the world that is not responsible for the climate disaster is the first part that is impacted by the climate climate change. And you see there is this disconnect, and everyone, all the stakeholders in the EU are so happy to have climate neutrality target by 2050. And just they again say that I am too radical when I say that, hey, it should be around 2033 and not 2050. And just to give you a small example that happened this week, because the European Commission published a new set of measures to repower the EU given the Ukraine crisis. And among these measures is to ban the use of gas boilers by 2027. And an NGO who is used to work for citizens, actually this is what you expect from an NGO, tweeted that, oh, great news, 2027, the ban of gas boilers. And I retweeted, no, it's too late. And her answer was, but we had nothing before that. Then I said, I don't expect from an NGO to applaud the European Commission for a program that is going to lock us in carbon. But you see, there is this disconnect, and people are happy with small steps. They don't understand that small steps are locking us forever and making the cost, increasing the cost of the decarbonization. And most likely, we are making with small steps decarbonization impossible in the future. Not only costly, but most likely it's going to be impossible for several parts of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to talk for a minute about the role of the media and what the media can do differently. And so to illustrate that, there's another short clip from the movie that we can show.
How big is this thing? Could it destroy someone's house? Is that possible?
Well, Comet BBYASKI, which is what it will officially be named, is somewhere.
After her.
Yeah, after her.
Oh, what an honor. Yeah, right. Congratulations.
It's somewhere between 6 and 9 kilometers across. So
it's big.
It would damage the entire planet, not just a house. You know.
The entire planet. Okay, well, as it's damaging, will it hit this one house in particular that's right on the coast of New Jersey? It's my ex-wife's house. I need it to be hit. Can we make that happen?
You and Shelley have a great relationship. No, you stop.
Listen, in all
fairness, you need to stop.
I will, but in all fairness, I actually paid for the house.
I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry, are we not being clear? We're trying to tell you that the entire planet is about to be destroyed.
Okay.
Well, it's, just something we do around here. We just keep the bad news light.
Right. It helps the medicine go down.
Great. So my question is for Camille. We just have a few minutes left before we're going to go to audience questions. But my question is for Camille. You do a lot of TV appearances. Whenever you do a TV appearance, does it basically feel like this for you?
So much. Like really, I might not be as cool as Jennifer Lawrence, but I really feel that when I just saw this movie, and especially this part, I was like, it felt so great, because I said, like, I can relate to it. Like, I can relate to this. This is the facts. This is what happens. And this is even worse sometimes in the real life. Like, you know, just these 2 days ago, I've been like threatened to death by a shareholder of BNP Paribas, that might be like these companies around here, because I was asking them, you are still financing fossil fuels, as the science is very clear. We have to keep the fossil fuels in the ground. So why are you giving them 8 billion euros? Like, just why? And all the shareholder, like the shareholder here, she said to me, I hope you will die soon. I mean, this is as violent as this. And this is for every climate activist like this. And I am part of the lucky one, because I live in France, but my friends from Uganda, it's even more dangerous than that. So we have really to understand that here the journalists have a duty, that they really have the responsibility, because they are the ones that are creating stories. They are the ones that are creating what's matter for people, but for policymakers as well. So every time they just tell me, you know, you're here, you're very emotional, that's nice, you're young, and oh, wow. But here is the facts, and they just invite these one guys that say that climate change is not for now, or that climate change, we always have experienced this, and blah, blah, blah. But this guy is lying, and behind me and us, there's all the science, but they don't really understand that we're not talking about idea, about religion, about feelings. This is fact, and so they have the duty to talk about this. And when they're just answering me, you know, we are sorry, because when we like do books or TV about this, nobody watch. But that's their job. As journalists, they have to tell good stories so that people know. That's basically the job. So do your job better if it's not working.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I jump in really quickly? So it got so bad in the States with exactly what you just said, where I kept hearing from friends of mine, because I have a lot of friends who work in the media, who are journalists, and they work very hard. And every one of them would tell me, we don't get ratings if we talk about the climate crisis. And I said, let me write your opening. Let me write the opening for your show. And they'd be like, oh, ha, 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 ha. And I'm like, because that's crazy. Any story involving fire tornadoes, continental derechos, Category 5 hurricanes, biblical droughts, you mean to tell me that can't get ratings?
Yeah, I think there is a climate story that's in the headlines every day, but it's often just not named as a climate story. Britt, was there something you wanted to say before we go to the audience?
Just, I feel so at home talking about that, because I can't tell you how many rejections from publishers I've had for wanting to write a book about climate, and I get these paragraphs explaining, oh, so interesting, but at the end, climate doesn't sell, or at the end, it's really such a drag to think about. At the end, it just doesn't perform, you know? Which is a massive failure on all of our parts to push for the legitimacy and the urgent need to tell moving, psychologically rich climate stories that can engage and entertain at the same time as, you know, bring us together on this issue.
Great. Well, thank you all so much. We have a few minutes for questions from the audience. There is a mic going around, and someone from ChangeNOW has the mic. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. For the panelists or for Adam. And the ChangeNOW volunteer can bring that mic over.
Hello, I have a question for Camille. How can we help you to stop that big pipeline?
Thanks for that. Basically, you can join on social media the Stop ECOP campaign. Get ready for everything, because we need civil disobedience. We need like media to talk about this and to go mainstream, because you know the clock is ticking. It's really under construction. So this is not just another pipeline. This is really a defining moment. And if we make this stop, that's mean for all the other industry to say, we are not letting you do this again. This time is done. Like you are not able to do, you will not be able to do other pipeline. So if you want to join, really contact us, because everyone is welcome. Really everyone. In the past few weeks, we've been working a lot, and we just see this movement growing and growing and starting to, like all the representatives that before just do not really care about us. Like I speak with Barbara Pompey, which was the Ministry of the Ecology, and first, so I follow her after a meeting, and she was saying, what is that? I don't know. Well, but and then now like they have to communicate on what the government is going to do about ECOP because it's becoming that big that we are getting back the power. So if you want to get involved, anyone, you're really welcome and you have something to do. If you're artist, journalist, activist, if you work in banks, anything, feel legitimate because you are, and just write her a message in this topic up, that would be the best thing to do. And if I can maybe, because I made another campaign on called Look Down. So thanks to the movie. So I get the thing here. So this is also something you could join. It's about the deep sea mining because as in the movie, they decided that profit will be above lives because they find in the comet that they can make money out of it. It's exactly the same happening today with our deep sea. They find that we can construct like new phone and new stuff like technology thanks to what we found deep sea, but we actually know this less than the surface of the moon. So we might destroy species that we don't yet discover. So this is really, really scary. And this is a biologist, marine, that comes to me with this, telling me, the sea, the ocean, is what captures the most CO2 today. And by doing this, we might release this CO2 like in the atmosphere. But I'm saying like we thanks guys, but we got enough. We really get enough of CO2 already. So please don't touch this. Don't touch the deep sea. And the construction might start next year. So we are also like working a lot on this. So if you want to join, the account is like Look Down Action.
So there's some questions in the front here. I see one over there too.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Andrea, and this is a question for Adam. So we're having so many wonderful documentaries that are really shedding light on climate crisis. Unfortunately, it seems like they're being watched by the converted crowd. That's why I was so super excited when Don't Look Up came out, because having Leonardo DiCaprio and all the wonderful cast, suddenly you're reaching masses. And I really wonder, like, what's next? How we can really ensure that those masses and those millions of people who have seen the movie are actually taking actions? How can we leverage it further? What's next?
Yeah, so I'm here in Ireland. I'm writing a series for HBO called, based on David Wells's book called Uninhabitable Earth. And it's going to be an anthology series, kind of like Black Mirror, about climate realities. I'm also working on a feature that's also, it's about how big money has run through our culture and really bent our perspective. So our company, Hyper Object Industries, which is named after Timothy Morton, the eco-philosopher's idea that climate change is a hyper object. We're doing a lot of that. What I'm excited about is there are so many talented filmmakers, novelists, poets, songwriters, musicians around the world. And really what I throw out there is just, jump onto this, really use your imagination and embrace it, because it does have an impact. I've done a lot of things throughout my life. I've done a lot of movies, TV shows, stage shows. Nothing I've ever worked on has had the ripples that Don't Look Up has had. I mean, it's been beautiful to see the amount of people that connected with it, and let us, the filmmakers, our team, know that we're not alone, because as much as the audience saw that they weren't alone, it also hit us as well. And even the anger at the movie, and there was plenty, was great. It really showed that there's a sensitive area there that people don't want to go near. So I would say, this is, without exaggeration, I go back to it empirically, the biggest story in human history. And I just wait for the day when the arts really fully come around this, because I think it's going to be a major part of the transformation we're going to see.
There's a question right there. Yes.
Hi, my name is Jake. My question is really focused around the GHG protocol and whether it was possibly a mistake to shove all of the emissions not within the direct scope of like a company's operations into scope 3, and if it makes it kind of a poison pill in a sense when it comes to regulating it.
You know, sorry, we can't hear you that well.
Oh,
yeah.
All right. Yeah, so the question was back around the GHG protocol and whether shoving all of the emissions not directly within the, what we consider scope 1 and 2, so like shoving everything else into scope 3, if that was possibly a mistake, and whether regulating scope 3 is, now possibly a poison pill the way it's currently structured, if it's time to revisit that or not.
That sounds like a question for you.
Okay, I'm not sure I heard the full question, but what people do not know is that the Paris Agreement and all international discussions are about what we call territorial emissions, the emissions that occur in your country. So the emissions related to the clothes I am wearing, I am sure they have been produced elsewhere. These emissions are not regulated. So for example, our climate neutrality target in Europe does not count for this. And what we did in the last 30 years with all the trade agreements that we had is that we, Western civilization, Western countries, we have exported our emissions. And this is, for example, one of the reasons why in Copenhagen, COP in Copenhagen in 2009 failed, because at that time, when you do that, then what you show, when you look at the emissions of today, then you see that emissions, for example, from China are higher than emissions in the EU, for example. Or emissions per capita in China, because you take all the emissions, you divide by the population, they are already a little bit higher than the EU. However, emissions in China, an important part of the emissions in China are not emissions for the Chinese, because of the Chinese population. These are our emissions, and we should take responsibility for these emissions. At this stage, it's not at all in the loop, it's not at all regulated. The first country to announce that they may regulate that is Sweden. It's quite early, and when you try we don't even have the full data set to say what are the consumption emissions, actually the overall emissions for everything. And industry is always replying that, oh, it's very difficult to produce this data, blah, blah, blah. You always have the same problem. But I do believe that if we have regulations that says that whatever you sell here in Europe, for example, you should you should indicate the overall emissions. And this should be game changer. We don't have that, unfortunately. And this is where we are today. So at the beginning, when you mentioned that buildings represent almost 20% of emissions, this is if you consider scope 3 emissions. So emissions also related to the use of cement and steel, and only cement and steel. If you do consider only emissions from buildings, so the share of buildings out of total emissions in 2019 would be 5.6% only. But if you consider scope 2, which are emissions related to heat and electricity used in buildings, you move from 5.6% to 16%. And if you add to that emissions from the use of steel and cement only, not everything, you reach 21%. So you see, if you present to policymaker a figure with only emissions from buildings, and you look at other sectors, so maybe policymakers will not prioritize buildings, and we hear that. But if you consider emissions scope 1, 2, 3, and then there is no policymaker, at least in democracies, who is a little bit bright, who could say, I will neglect this sector. And that's why we need to do that in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. I know we're running out of time. Can we do one more question? Can we do one more question? Who has the mic? Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Hello. So I have a question for all of you, actually. I feel like there is a thing that we are not speaking enough, and I would say those are financial penalties against governments or against big companies. What I want to say is that it makes me think about pharmaceutical companies. I know that they actually include the budget for penalties into their project budget, you know? So it makes me think that as far as the financial institutions, like banks, they give money to, you know, for different causes that we don't like, let's say, okay? So for gas, for fuel, etc. And then they make money on it. So for me, personally, I think that as far as they make more money on this, they won't ever stop, you know? And I don't know what we could do, let's say, on our bottom level personally, or how can we change this, actually?
You want to take?
I'll jump in real quick. We just did an action in Los Angeles. The Royal Bank of Canada is financing a lot of pipelines and horrible fossil fuel projects up there. And then the bank I'm with, City National Bank, is owned by that bank. So we went downtown and we picked up a bullhorn and we yelled at City National, and I'm this close. I'm giving them one more beat to withdrawing my money from there and moving on. And I would say there's a lot we can do with that. I mean, look at the shame that Yale and Harvard had for so many years, where they would not divest their endowment from fossil fuels, and finally they did it. Every university, every bank, insurance companies, by the way, are a huge part of this. Every one of them should have nothing to do with fossil fuels. And this is a case where we have a lot of power. We've been sort of corralled as consumers. But the downside for these companies in treating us like consumers is we can be really loud about the fact that you should not do business with this bank. You should not do business with this insurance company. You should not support this college. You should not donate. There is no excuse for any university or college to have any of their endowment in fossil fuels. And I would say this goes across the board. And the second part of that, I would say, is like, I think we have to get used to the fact that our governments, our media have been captured by big money. And I think we got to get ready. And you forget, this used to be the case for century after century, that citizens would go in the streets. I know France does it quite well, but a lot of other countries don't. And I think it's time that we start locking ourselves against refineries, delivery of oil. I'm talking about peaceful civil disobedience, of course, but I think we're at that point. I've spent a lot of years trying to petition government and companies, and I got to tell you, they live on a quarterly timescale. So it is time. It is time for people to hit the streets in a peaceful way, but in an aggressive, focused way, and shut down this economy that is literally, empirically murdering the planet.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're almost out of time, but yeah.
Could not agree more with Adam on that. And the question is so important because we feel trapped. We feel as though it might be impossible to budge out of this. But what it takes is a radical shift in terms of what we are measuring. We are measuring GDP. GDP does not count for the externalities of the harms on the environment and the harms on people. We need to shift to other metrics that we do have, by the way. There's a whole booming, burgeoning field of degrowth economics, which has powerful ideas about how we can make these shifts. Instead of looking at measuring in the healthcare space disability-adjusted life years, we can move to well-being-adjusted life years. We are being pushed to make huge fomentive changes that do require that we undo our current metric system. But we need to get loud. We need to become prospective survivors, which is really what I think Adam is. Thank you for your courage, Adam, in making this film. The prospective survivor concept comes from a psychoanalyst, Robert J. Lifton, who studies the history of human-caused atrocity and evil. And he says that, you know, a real survivor is someone who has touched death but made it out alive. Whereas a prospective survivor is what we're all being challenged to be right now in the climate crisis, where we viscerally imagine our death. We focus on it, we think about it. And of course, we're not facing it necessarily, those of us in the room right now, but we can use the power and energetic motivation of the emotional distress that brings us to brush the distractions aside and hone in on what matters and tap into that deep existential meaning and purpose and make those uncomfortable shifts and demand an economy that doesn't only count GDP.
Thank you. So, we are running over time, but I want to hear from Camille and Yamina both quickly about this because...
Super quickly, what Adam just said, exactly what we've been doing past weeks with Topic Up. Basically, your money actually might finance, without you knowing, this pipeline and many others, because these banks are financing Total. So we create an app when you can just go on the Rift or just go on Topic Up and you will see all the info. You can just super quickly put your name and your account, and then you will find out if you're financing this pipeline or the pipeline or not. And then you just have to click on the link, and that would directly, we have an algorithm, we work with people that are way better at math than I am, and they just discover the people that are in charge in your bank of your money. And then you just click on the link. It takes you only 2 minutes to do this action, honestly. And the people in your bank will receive an email from you saying, I do not want my money to finance this. So now you just take this out, or I quit. And there you get the power, because if it comes from the intern, they only matters about money, basically. So if the people, the clients, are saying, that's enough. We're going to quit if you don't stop this. There is a Total assembly, the 25th of May, so in really few days, and those huge banks are the shareholders of this company, of Total, BP, Shells, and stuff. So they could vote against what they call the climate plan, which is not climate anything, they just climate in the name, but it's all bullshit. So we are trying to use the shareholders' power to stop all these pipelines from coming. So you have the power, it just take you 2 minutes, and just please do it.
Thank you. Yeah, and if you want to learn more about civil disobedience, definitely check out what Camille does, because you're a pro at it. Yamina, please last.
Yeah, without repeating what was said by all the other speakers, I fully agree, but we need to have regulation back. Because what we lost since Reagan's time is that our government, we are voting in our democracies for politicians, and by the end, it's those who are making profit from the climate crisis that are taking decisions. That's why we need policies back, and that was one of the major conclusions from the IPCC last report, is that individual action matters. However, to have the individual action happening, we need to have policies and infrastructure in place to be able to enable this individual action, because you will do it, maybe all the people in this room will do it, but we are billions of people financing through our institutional, financial institutions the climate crisis. So, and we cannot mobilize all these billions of people. That's why we need regulation back, and we need to policies back, because if policies are back, this means that the people of the planet are back. Thank you.
Well, I think we have to end it there. We went over time. I hope ChangeNOW doesn't mind. I think it was worth it. It was a great conversation. But I want to say thank you to Adam again for joining us. Thank you, Yamina. Thank you, Britt. And thank you, Camille.
Thank you, Adam.
Thanks.
Hi, you guys.
Oh, yeah, and
Hi,
we
Britt.
want to do a picture all together.